Hey folks, Eddie G, DM Fumble, so this must be fumbling around. Today I want to talk about those aha moments in your game. Moments where your players say, oh wow, or hopefully something less YouTube friendly. How do you do that? Subvert expectations. Okay, that's just a fancy way for saying throw in a plot twist. So today, I want to give you 3 ways you can twist your plots, surprise your players, and get them more excited about your games than ever. And stay tuned to the end of the video where I give you the one plot twist you should never try to pull on your players. I'll explain why you don't want to do it and what I do when I encounter it in pre-written modules. First, for all these plot twists, realize that you can't do this all the time, or your players will grow bored and it loses that wow factor. And what I mean is that you can't do the same type of plot twist every time. Vary it up so you're not stuck in a rut. I know it's as clear as mud right now, but let's look at a few examples and hopefully everything will make sense. For these plot twists, let's break them down into people, places, and things. When it comes to people, I think these can pack a lot of punch if you come up with something clever. And if you want to test this out on your players, start small. For example, you can have the party walking into the tavern, and instead of the bartender, that burly bartender, flexing his muscles and cleaning a mug with his dirty bar rag, maybe he's got his head down and he's writing poetry. And it's actually really good. Depending on how interested your party might be, this could spin out into some interesting adventures. From delivering that poem to the bartender's love, or taking him to the king's literary contest and getting this commoner in front of the upper classes so he can read his great work. But enough about our bard-tender. See what I did there? I promise you, his work is better than mine. Here's a few other player twist examples from my own past games. In one adventure I ran, the party encountered a group of clerics of an evil sea goddess, Zeboim for all you Dragonlance fans out there. But they were not the source of the problem. Actually, another evil power was behind it. Using the evil sea goddess revealed as the innocent party threw the players for a loop. After realizing what was actually going on, they defeated the true villain and helped these evil clerics. In another adventure, the party was told that a ghost was haunting the ruins where they needed to retrieve that adventure's MacGuffin. The ghost turned out to be a broken-hearted woman whose true love had seemingly abandoned her. By adding a bit more backstory to this stock character, I turned her from a simple monster into someone the party had to deal with on a whole different level. And as they would find out, simply attacking her would not work. But more on that later. In your games, are there NPCs that you can tweak? Maybe the goblins raiding the village actually do it so they can appease their bugbear oppressors. Or the bandit leader is trying to get enough treasure so that he can pay the ransom for his sister. Either of these ideas can lead to new and interesting adventures that can further enrich your games. Now let's look at plot twists involving places. Depending on where the adventure is happening, the place itself can always be used to surprise your players. Again, you can start off small and just look to incorporate a few battlefield terrain effects like difficult terrain, cover, or higher ground. But as you become more comfortable, look for more interesting and complex things you can add. For example, in Grotto of the Death Giant, an adventure I wrote for the Storm King's Barrows anthology available on DM's Guild, spoilers for a module that's been out for over 4 years. Anyway, in the final boss fight, that battlefield is set up to give the players a unique and easier way of dealing with that final boss, which is an avatar of a god. Seeding clues to this final encounter throughout the module made it easier for players to see a quicker route to victory. Sure, they could slog through a deadly encounter, or they could approach another route for less fatalities. Another example, going back to that heartbroken ghost mentioned earlier, in the final battle, no amount of damage will actually destroy it. She comes back every few hours. On top of that, they actually need her help in acquiring the MacGuffin that brings them to the dungeon in the first place. As they investigate the area, they find clues, including old journals, that reveal the backstory. If they can prove to the ghost that her beloved intended to come back, as detailed in his final journal entry, that would be enough to get the ghost on their side. But as it turns out, my players came up with an even better way. One of the characters is always performing famous poems, songs, etc. from memory. He asked if there was any famous story about this warrior, and I was able to build on that and say yes, a famous song about the warrior from a legendary battle did exist. Though it was not part of my original notes, it made perfect in-game sense, so I allowed it. That turned out to be enough to convince the ghost and earn her favor. Bonus tip. Always look for ways to incorporate your players' ideas into the game, like it was part of your plan all along. It makes your players feel empowered, and you look smart, so everybody wins. Hey folks, are you enjoying this video? I knew you would. And you know what else I know about you? You're special. You don't want to be part of the 90% of the people that are watching this video that aren't subscribed to this channel. And you can fix that right now. Stand apart from the crowd. Hit that subscribe and the like button while you're at it. Now, back to the show. Last on my list is things. This can be anything from a puzzle to a mystery or some kind of widget that the party must figure out and then neutralize or even exploit. Let's look at these in detail. The biggest issue with puzzles can be the frustration factor. That point where the party has exhausted all their ideas and they have no way of advancing the story, where the adventure grinds to a halt. When planning a puzzle, you have to build plenty of clues, more than you think you need, and you need to build in solutions that don't require solving the puzzle. Maybe they encounter a door, can't solve the puzzle, and after exploring the current level, they get some more obvious clues. Or even two parts of a broken key that can be fixed, assuming one of your players has the mending spell, and then used to open the door. What you want to avoid is giving them the answer outright, or leading them with details like, oh, you think there's something in one of those books on the shelf. It's obvious to everyone what you're doing, and either your players feel dumb for not figuring out based on the original clues, or see it as a hollow victory as you basically hand them the solution. Mysteries work much like puzzles, but the stakes are higher, a murder, a theft. Not only is there a chance for the frustration factor, but there's also the flip side, where the party casts a spell. Talk to the dead, killer revealed. Or they cast locate object, item found. You don't want to nerf their spells with that hackneyed, well, magic doesn't work here. But you do need to plan around those possible spells. And if they spring something you hadn't planned, don't punish them. Instead, reward them. A little bit. They find the object, but now they need to find out who took it. Or maybe that killer was hired or blackmailed by someone else. Now the mystery is back on. The game is still afoot. For widgets, maybe it's something that gives the enemies some extra powers. The bad guys might glow with the same energy as a nearby crystal widget when the bad guys use those abilities. Or they don't go more than 30 feet away from that object, because then they lose that benefit. Once figured out, maybe the party can make use of it themselves to even up the battle. The only limit is your imagination. So there you have it. 3 ways that you can throw some twists in your D&D games. Either through changing up the monsters and people they run across, the places they find themselves, or things they interact with. Hopefully this gives you plenty of ideas to incorporate into your next game and beyond. Wait a minute. Didn't I promise you the one thing you never want to spring on your players? I did say that at the beginning of the video. So, since you've hung around, here it is. The one thing you never want to spring on your players, something I've never been able to work in my games, and it doesn't even have any in-game logic. What is it? Betrayal. Where someone betrays the party, typically right after having been rescued by that same party. This is such an overdone cliche. All but the most novice players will be expecting it whenever you try to run it. In one of my recent games, the module said, the prisoner turns on the party at the first opportunity. When is that? When they heal up? Get some armor? A sword? And even then, it's still a 1-on-5 fight. Not good odds. Maybe they can peel one of the players off and make it a 1-on-1 fight, but when the rest of the party figures out what's going on, that rescued prisoner is going to have some explaining to do. For my game, I dropped that nonsense completely, and instead I gave the prisoner a more useful role, information provider. Since he'd been there for a while, he could pass on some details, if set free, that the party could use later. I know they were expecting that betrayal, but all he wanted was to be free and pointed towards the exit. The party even ended up giving him a few days' rations and a dagger, and he never once thought about harming the people who just set him free. In another instance, they were hired to find out what happened to a previous band of tomb raiders. After finding the first group all transformed into undead, and the patron's ancient ancestor turned into a devil, the party defeats everything and returns. The module actually called for the patron and his 2 janky bodyguards to attack the party. Like these two were going to do what a dozen undead, various traps, and a devil couldn't do? That makes absolutely no sense. I reworked it so after the party left, and after another adventure or two, they were ambushed in an alleyway by hired killers, assassins who took the job blind so it couldn't be traced back to the patron quickly. And those assassins are higher level and in greater numbers. That's how you try to tie up loose ends. So that's the one twist you should always try to avoid. And if you see it in a printed module, either change it to something else or drop it out altogether. Whatever works for you. And finally, cheers. Until next time.